All right, good timing, good timing. Literally just getting going. All right, Mr. Go, since you're in the back, would you mind hitting the lights? All right, thank you. Okay, so today's kind of marks a really fun day for us as we're going to be beginning to transition between a couple from the object world. And we've been working with a lot of objects over the past 5 or 6 weeks, very, very small in size. Well, today we're going to transition into something much, much larger. My goal in this course is to expose you guys to the many different mediums in which you can use 3D modeling and rendering. Architectural visualization is one of those outputs of our industry that has really kind of exploded over the past maybe 8 or 9 years. 3D modeling in the architectural visualization world seems almost like a natural pairing. However, the quality of the results that we have been gaining over the past couple of years has skyrocketed. It's been really, really quite amazing. And because of the quality of the images and the renderings that you can produce straight out of Modo, the architectural visualization world is just jumping in a big, big way. If you like doing buildings and if you like architectural visualization, there is a ton of work out there, and there is a lot of work. There really is, okay? For a while, producing an image like this used to be very, very, very expensive for an architect, okay? If you think our stuff, if you think working in Modo is stupid hard, okay, try working in a traditional CAD application, okay? It really is designed for an engineer, someone who thinks mechanically, who thinks in numbers and ones and zeros and things like that, okay? The tools are ambiguous, the workflow is non-existent, and it's very difficult to make something like this, okay? Which is why you don't see a lot of pretty pictures in the architectural visualization world. Well, I think Modo has impacted the architectural visualization community in a big way, because we can work at that same kind of CAD level. We can build everything in real-world dimensions, and we can very easily recreate an illustration that comes directly for an architect and produce some really beautiful artwork that completely visualizes the end result, the final product. Okay. It's even got so transparent between the two industries now that I can actually take the actual CAD file from an architect, bring it into Modo, and just render it out. Okay? I can apply all my fancy materials. I can use the phenomenal global illumination system to create some really, really amazing results. Okay? So this is one new medium inside the 3D industry that has really taken off over the last 8 or 9 years. And Modo is definitely leading the charge in that, okay? Because as you guys know, working with Modo, the tools are easy to work with, okay? The workflow is apparent. It's there. You can very easily transition between the modeling, the texturing, the rendering, the animation stage, which we haven't talked about, very, very easily in our app. We almost kind of take it for granted how easy it is to work with some of these tools. But then jump over into other applications and like traditional CAD apps like AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, becomes a little bit more difficult to flush out these forms quickly using that artistic pipeline that we're used to working within. So this week is all about architectural visualization. It's all about creating big things. And through the conversation that we're going to have today, we're going to introduce some new tools that will help us craft and very quickly create some high-detailed objects for our house. So this week, you're making a house. You're making a house. You can make any house that you want, although I would suggest maybe you make like a house that you're familiar with, okay? Now don't freak out. You're only doing the outside of the house, the exterior only. I'm not going to force you guys to do the interior, although if you set up the foundation for your model correctly, you could very easily create the interior for your house later on, but it's not going to be an expectation nor a requirement for this project. I happen to really like architectural visualization because it allows me to use the basic tools inside of Modo and to create forms, structures, different plane changes to create a compelling space for us to look at. Okay, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's it also allows us to talk. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the rendering side and the textures, so we can get some really neat things happen on the surface.
So, if you had, say, you had the blueprints for this home, I mean, would you be using things like the pen tool?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm going to show you a new extension of the pen tool that I think is really going to make make it applicable to the architectural visualization world. We have a wall mode for the pen tool that's awesome. That makes flushing out blueprints really fast, okay? The trickiest part about architectural visualization isn't the blueprints. It isn't the footprint of the house. That's pretty easy, because if you look at most homes, it's no more than a whole series of 90-degree corners, the occasional off angle from here or there. What's challenging are the elevations, being able to capture the overall volume from the front of the house to the side of the house, and ensuring that the roof lines across the entire surface match the elevations of the original plan. That's the hard part. And I want to show you some tips and some techniques today that will help you work through this process. We're also going to explore, I know you guys have been waiting for it, we're also going to explore the art of Booleans today. Booleans are a fantastic extension to our modal toolbox that allows us to cut pieces, from other pieces. So we're using geometry to influence the shape of other pieces of geometry, and it's really neat. An incredibly powerful tool when flushing out roof lines, but also we want to punch holes in our walls, right, for windows and doors. Using the traditional slicing tools like loop slice or even Bevel can be a little bit of an organizational nightmare in the architectural world. Booleans allow us provide us with a certain degree of consistency all across the mesh and a certain ease of use. So we're going to show you some of that as well. I'm also going to start to jump in and talk a little bit more about some precision modeling techniques as we start to explore the world of snapping, okay? Because we want to be able to, especially for architectural stuff, we want to be able to model with a high degree of accuracy, because we really want to try to recreate as close as we can a one-to-one analog of the actual blueprint or the actual building itself. So there needs to be some level of accuracy in there, okay? Also, from my own personal experience, when we work and build within the correct appropriate scale, it's really easy to understand the size and shapes of particular features across the doors, or across the mesh. For example, the doors. There is a standard door size, okay? There are standard window sizes out here in the real world. Well, if we know those numbers, we can very quickly and easily apply those values into our model. Makes modeling easier, makes modeling faster, okay? So we'll go into that a little bit later on as well. So today is all about buildings. Today's all about buildings. And I've given you some samples on the home page here that kind of illustrate where you can go with this entire art form, okay? It's not so much just drawing a CAD, a CAD illustration of the blueprint, but it's to visualize how this building is going to influence, its surroundings, what it's going to look like in its final form, okay? And there's some really great examples of this. So clearly, because of the size of these objects, these are going to be relatively low geometric detailed objects. These aren't going to be subdivision surfaces. So we're going to be able to use our straight up polygonal tools to flush out the walls, the roof, and the windows, and so on and so forth of our little house. Okay. Let's look at another one. Another great example coming from our professional world. All these came from Modo. These are pure Modo renders. All the modeling and the texturing and rendering done right here in Modo. Architectural visualization also allows us to get a kind of a better understanding of some of the intimate details along the surface of our houses and our homes. Okay, we want to be able to produce an image that that compels our audience and starts to let our audience understand what this object is going to look like when it's finished. Ideally, we want to be able to have the viewer of our render start to place themselves in this environment and start to have them engage in the visuals and kind of hopefully let them in their imagination walk around the building based off the images that we're crafting. Okay, it's going to be a tremendous amount of fun. I love archviz. It's really cool. It's really cool. All right, so if we go over into our homework tab for a second here, I just want to kind of draw focus to what we're going to be building for your homework assignment this week. As I mentioned, we're building the exterior of a house. I've included some links to some very successful student projects. However, I probably should change these because I understand that there's a certain level of confusion that can reign out with the images that I provided. This is going to be a 2-week process. 2 weeks. Week 1, we're just going to make the model. Okay. And then next week, we're going to look at the process of texturing this bad boy. So we're going to focus entirely on the material and texture setup next week, because there's some interesting things on the texture mapping side that we kind of have to have mastery on in order to get the correct duplication and replication of the surface details on the textures. Okay, so we're going to look at that next week. And the entire day next week is going to be all about textures. Okay, textures and materials and rendering. Okay, so it's a two-part process. Geometry this week, textures next week. Okay, it's going to be pretty cool. Before we go any further, this is my little hidden Mickey of the day. Does anyone recognize this home? Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. One of my students did that a couple years ago, and I was like, this is going to be the banner image for this project because I think it's just rad. I think it's just rad. And I told him, I was like, dude, where's the car in the driveway? You know, you got to put the car in there. Got to put you know, Marge's car in there. I love The Simpsons. Okay. Your lab this week is going to allow you to explore the architectural visualization world. You're going to be doing some research today on a number of different things, so we'll come back. We'll come back to that. You're going to be handing in your research, so this isn't kind of a freebie. I've also included some resources here that I would like you to bookmark. The first one is probably the most important one, CG Textures. We'll come back to that later. There's also some really great videos in the Resources tab that I think cover the process of working with Boolean pretty clearly. Okay, so definitely check these out and keep them in your own personal learning library. All right, questions? 10,000-yard description, kind of understand what the scope of today's conversation is going to be about? All right, let's do it. Let's jump into Modo and start exploring how we can use or how we can build some of these awesome shapes. Last week we spent a little time talking about the pen tool. I want to kind of explore the pen tool in a little bit more detail today because the pen tool really gives us an opportunity, especially through the lens of architectural visualization, to flush out some shapes quickly. Okay, quickly, and that's all. That's I think what Modo is all about, allowing us to very quickly create some polygons, some forms that match what the final result's going to be. Okay, I'm going to flip over into the top view here, just so I can kind of get a God's eye view of my building. And we're going to use the pen tool to outline the blueprint, the footprint, if you will, of our little home. Okay. Now, last week when we were working with the pen tool, and it's over here, still chilling in the Basics tab. There it is. There's the pen tool. Okay. Last week when we were working with the pen tool, it allowed us to create a custom polygon quickly. Just by left-clicking in the viewport, we were able to create a custom shape. Pretty rad. But through the lens of architectural visualization, not that important, right? Not that great. Not that really applicable. Okay. So here we go. I'm just simply left-clicking here. And you can see that I can just very quickly flush out a shape. Okay. Well, if I'm making the blueprint for a house, I certainly want to have a certain kind of level of precision here that will allow me to create the walls of my house. So we need to extend the power of the pen tool to give us that feature. And it's kind of one of those little hidden Mickeys inside the pen tool. It's pretty neat. And it's really an incredibly powerful tool. If you start to use the pen tool creatively, it opens up the door. So I'm going to just delete this wild, wacky, weird custom shape here. Fire off the pen tool. And now I want to draw your focus to the options, because the options that we need to enable are going to be down here in the lower left-hand corner. And specifically, what we want to do is we want to activate wall mode. Okay? Wall mode is going to allow us to define basically a wall. Okay, let me show you what it looks like in action. The default value is off. Okay, I'm going to turn mine to inner, and I'll show you the differences between the two. And then we also need to give it a size parameter here. Okay, so it is working in a real world unit of measurement, so we want to make sure that we're including that. I think for interior walls, and I'm probably wrong because I'm not an architect, but I think if I remember correctly, it's like 6 inches is the size of the width of all interior walls. And then I think our building code says like exterior walls need to be 10 inches, I think, or something like that. So we're just going to work with that idea that there is a defined width of all of our walls. So let's just put an exterior wall value of 10 inches. Okay. And FYI, if you're wanting to use the real world system of scale here, just as kind of a small little refresher, if you're used to working in feet, that guy equals feet. So what is that? The apostrophe. Okay. And then the quotes equals inches. Okay. FYI. If you want to enter those values into those fields, it makes it a little bit easier. So 10 inches, hit the return key.
Where can we go again to change it from meters to inches?
Yeah, real easy. So if you don't even want to have to deal with meters and centimeters and all that mumbo jumbo, go to the top of the screen where it says Moto. Okay, on yours, I think it's going to be in System. Okay. System? Yeah, for me on the Mac, it's in Moto. But what we're looking for is Preferences. Okay, and then in this crazy long list, towards the bottom here, we have this input category, and there it is, units. Units. And what we need to change is the unit system from metric to English. And now everything will be in feet and inches. Okay. You can also change the default unit. If you work in a small scale, you know, instead of having the default unit be feet, you can also go inches. Okay, so that's kind of helpful. Some people think in inches, some people think in feet. Change it to whatever you want. I'll leave it at feet for the time being. All right. Okay, so 10 inches in my offset. Now watch what happens on my screen when I start left clicking. I'm no longer going to be able to create a wacky custom shape. So I click once, we just get a control vertice, but the second time I click, check it out. We now have a quad polygon that's perfectly rectangular, that's at precisely 10 inches in width. Okay? Okay, so this dimension right here is 10 inches. Okay? So if we keep clicking, if we keep expanding this.
Can you go over that one more time, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to activate the pen tool, and then in the pen tool options, I've activated wall mode just by changing its mode to inner. I'll show you the differences between the two here in a minute. And then this is the piece that people often overlook. You have to produce an offset value to produce that thickness. If it's at 0, it's just going to be vertices. You're not actually going to get any sort of polygon in there. Okay. And now I'm just going to left click in my OpenGL viewport to start throwing down some control vertices. The first time I click, I'm just going to get a dot. Okay. But the second time I click, I'm going to start defining a wall. There we go. Let me zoom out. And that's precisely 10 inches in width. And now, wherever I click inside the viewport, you can see that the computer is casting some rays down the line here, and I can create the exterior wall of my house. Okay? It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now, the other options inside the pen tool are still live. They still are going to affect the outcome of this. Specifically, if you look at the default pen options, the pen tool options, let me zoom in here. If you want to have your walls be closed, just make sure you click that on. So I'm just in the general pen tool options here. There we go. And this is still live, by the way, too, so you can always go back in and change the orientation of your walls and create something that's kind of neat. So the close up, so it's kind of like the closing your loop inside of your path inside of Photoshop. That's what it's going to do, Van. Just going to close the strip of polygons. All right.
Now, if you were talking about the definition of leveling and then that type of thing, what if you were in a multi-level home that has different foundation levels?
Yeah, then it gets pretty complex. I think in a situation like that where you have story 1, story 2, story 3 that have different footprints, you might want to throw those on to their own mesh items, start separating them out. At the outcome of this entire process, we're going to get polygons, so we can still use our traditional polygonal modeling tools to help get us closer to that final result. So. When we get to start talking about snapping, I think there's some stuff in there that would help. Okay, that way we can ensure that, because if you're doing a multi-story building, the outside of that building needs to have some consistency between the floors. It's really the interior floor plan that's going to change. The outside is going to be, well, depending on the building, it's going to be consistent. Or the exterior wall shape is going to be consistent. let me show you the differences between the inner and the outer type of walls. I want you to look very closely. Let me zoom in so you guys can see what's happening. I want you to look very closely at where the walls are being generated from. Notice that my control vertices are kind of on the inside of what I would call the house, okay? So here's the control vertice, and the little ray that's being cast and fired out from the scene is traveling out, kind of radially out from that control vertice. Well, we can change that if we'd like, okay? In the wall mode options, right now, my options are set to inner. However, if I change it to outer, watch what happens. Boom, what happened? We inverted it. The control vertices are in the exact same location. They haven't moved. This point here is in the exact same location. However, instead of having the wall be generated this way, now we're generating it inside, okay? Inside. Some people like working like this. This just allows you to work in a way that's most comfortable for your brain. And then, of course, we can do a combination of them too. We'll do both sides. And now you can see that that control vertice is in the center. Okay? So now we have the distance between that point and that point is 5 inches, and then there's 5 inches down here. So the total width of our wall is still 10 inches. We're just determining where those control vertices are defining the shape. Yeah? I probably wouldn't use both sides. I think it's not really an accuracy. It's more of a workflow thing. Where do you want to place the vertices on the mesh, and how do you want these vertices to impact each other? So it's probably just a workflow thing for me. I almost always kind of do inner, but I know some people that use outer because they want to be able to very quickly define the exteriors of their shapes with these control vertices and then have the computer figure out the rest. Okay? So it's really up to you, depending on how you want to work. And while the tool is still live, we can continue making changes to the dimensions of our walls. So if maybe we flush things out at 10 inches and then we decide, man, crap, they need to be 6 inches. Well, if the tool is still live, we can just reset those values and the walls will change and update on the fly. So it's a pretty cool system. It's a pretty cool system. Yeah?
I've had problems with, sometimes I accidentally drop a pencil or
Uh-huh. Yeah, so don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about the modeling tools, or just Modo in general. We don't have object history. So if you're coming from another app like Maya or 3D Studio Max, we have object history, so we can always go back to the component that physically is driving the creation of that shape and make changes to its original parameters. We don't have that here, so the moment you drop the tool, you lose access to all the lovely blue control vertices on the actual tool itself. So being a good 3D modeler is a lot like being a good chess player. We have to think 3 or 4 steps ahead. So really think about what you're building now and how that's going to affect your shape 3 or 4 steps from now. And you'll get out of that habit. You'll get out of that habit. I think it's when you're first learning, it's almost instinctual to hit the space bar or to fire off the tool prematurely. So you'll get used to kind of pausing for a second, letting your brain think about steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before you terminate the tool and move on. Okay. And shoot, I do it all the time as well, where it's impossible to predict everything. It really is. And the cold, hard truth about the reality of being a 3D modeler is that you're going to build the thing 3 or 4 times. You really are before you're finally done with it. That's just part of the process. That's part of the process. Let me show you what I'm talking about, just so you guys can see what happens even for dudes that know what they're doing. Okay. So here's the project directory for the Jeep that I've been working on, right? That I finished up last year. I have 13 different versions of this Jeep. Okay? So even dudes that know what they're doing are going to have to restart their project file and continue to explore new processes, new techniques, and new forms that will ultimately give you the result that you want. So it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. The experiences you're having are kind of normal.
Can you show me a difference between 2 files where that epiphany came that you had to start another one?
Let's see. You know, here's another way I can do it. I don't want to open up the project files because it's just going to take a long time to load the damn thing because it's a pretty big project file. However, on a different project, I have renders. I have renders that will show you. Let me go into my model folder. All right. All right. So whenever I'm working on a project for production, I always take little renders from time to time, just to kind of document my process. Okay. And this is the process that I went through for my big ship that I'm making, my HMS Victory. There we go. So here is the beginning of the hull. Of course, you're going to start with the hull of the ship, the outline of the ship, and I started off by making these splines, okay, the kind of cross sections of the entire hull. From the reference that I was able to secure, I had cross section reference for almost every 10 feet on the ship. So I kind of averaged out some of those shapes and made a whole series of splines that I was then in my mind, in my master plan thinking here, I was going to do some patching, and that's kind of an advanced modeling technique, okay, some bridging and some patching. Well, that didn't go so well. That didn't go so well, and I had to pivot, okay? So then I started to think, well, maybe I'll just follow the traditional kind of sub-D process. I'll start with a plane, a high-resolution plane, and then I'll start using some fall-off and some other fancy things to move points away from the center of the x-axis and start to kind of pull everything out, okay? And that kind of went okay, and you can see the result here. It's just me, okay? That went okay, and after some more banging on my head, some more iterations, I started to refine the shape, and then I think eventually I just started with a box, just a really long cube, and I subdivided the hell out of it, and it was incredibly high resolution, and I just started pushing and pulling points to match all of those reference images that I had, and after some struggles, I started to really get and capture the shape of my boat, okay. You can see that I've started to refine it as we go through the process here. And eventually, I think I ended up rebuilding the hull of the ship, I think probably 4 times in its entirety. Because every time I did it, I discovered something that I didn't know and didn't consider the previous time. I figured out a better way to tackle this problem, or a new technique that will allow me to more accurately describe the bow of the ship opposed to another part. And then, well, how am I going to do the windows? Well, that's man. This is a 100-gun ship, so there's over 100 different openings in the hull that I have to model. That a whole series of challenges around that as well. So this is kind of the best visual example that I can show you of the progress and kind of the thought process that I had to go through to get me to that final result. So this is getting pretty close. I've since, from these models, these are 2008 renders. I know I've gone in and I've tweaked the hull a couple times. The guys down at Luxology have included some really neat technology called Pixar subdivision surfaces that really changed my outcome for this entire object. And shoot, 5 years ago. 5 years ago? Yeah, 5 years ago when I started this process, I was at one place in my physical skill and technique in 3D modeling. I'm at a much different place now, and sometimes I mentioned this before. This is an experience-based art form. The more experience you have with the software, the more experience you have making these little puzzles, the better the final result's going to be. And I looked back at the mesh and I was like, wow, what was I thinking? I must have been smoking something that day because, geez, that's not the structure that I want. At this point in my little kind of diary here of renders, I'm pretty close to the final result. Yeah. The final outline of the hull. The little cannon. Yeah, there we go. There is the damn thing right there. And there's even still some issues on the hull of the ship that I'm not happy about. But every time I look at it, I say, you know what? Half the boat's going to be underwater. You're not going to see it. I just can't spend any more time trying to figure out why this one edge loop is not solving the way I need it to solve. Okay? The audience is never going to see it, so why am I going to spend a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out something that they're never going to see?
Because it might be in the desert.
Say again?
Because it might be in the desert.
What's going to be in the desert? No, it's going to be in an ocean. Yeah, there comes a time when you really have to take a step back and look at your product and say, okay, are they going to see this? And you'll do this in your house, and this is kind of apt for our house. Okay, people always do this almost every single semester. They make their house and then they start to detail their house. I had one guy about a year ago. He made like a 2 million polygon doorknob. And he spent a lot of time working on this doorknob. And when the camera was right up next to the door, it looked amazing, right? The materials were beautiful. The modeling was beautiful. I mean, he did a really great job on his doorknob. And then he got really, really kind of pissed at me when I said, okay, this is great. You did a great job. But what you're turning in for credit is going to be a render of the entire house. And he looked at me. He's like, you're not going to be able to see the doorknob. And I was like, well, you should have thought of that before we spent 40 hours making a doorknob, okay? It's part of the process, you know? Part of the process, okay? If your audience isn't going to see it, if the camera's not going to be really, really close to that object, it needs to be relatively low resolution, okay? I try to model everything in as low resolution as I possibly can initially, and then start composing my shot, because if I can't see it in the shot, I'm not rendering it, or I'm not even going to model it. I'm not even really going to consider that detail on those objects. Let me show you another example just to kind of prove that point. I'm working on some things. With everything in my life, I always seem to have about 8 things in production at the same time. Here we go. Okay. So I am working on a project with my little train. And let's see. Here we go. All right, so I'm making a town. Yay! A little town for my train, right? A little town for my train. And you guys, this is the train that I'm talking about. Okay. And let's see. I'm in the wrong folder here. I need to go into previz. I don't need to go into previz. Where did I put it? Definitely not in textures. Should have been in renders. Oh no. Hopefully I didn't lose it. Yeah, okay. All right, let me just show you the actual project file for the previous shot that I'm working on, and you can get a kind of better understanding just from the animation that we're going to be working with here. Okay, so in this little animation that I have, this is going to be a windmill, okay? Whenever you're fleshing out complex sequences, you always do it in the lowest resolution possible, right? Because you only want to model what the camera is going to see. I'm not going to model an entire town unless I can see every single one of those buildings within a certain distance from the render camera, right? So this is going to be a windmill when it's done, just kind of a placeholder, just to kind of establish my composition, my timing, and the length of the shot. And within the shot itself, you know, it's important that I start to establish and describe that there's a small little town behind my train station. It's an important detail. But look how far away those buildings are from the camera, okay? They're pretty far. They're way off out there in the distance. They're not extraordinarily close. And you're only going to see them for, you know, the windmill is going to be moving, is blocking most of the shot. So if we just play the animation, you're only going to see them for maybe 5 seconds in their full glory before they're completely occluded and covered up by the sign that's on the actual train station itself. Okay, so they're not going to be a hero model. So I'm not going to spend 80 hours on each individual building because they're just not going to be seen in the final project. Okay. For whatever reason, my train didn't turn on. It's kind of cool when you see the train in there with the final shot. It's pretty neat. Yeah, so the train's coming into the station for the first shot of the short film. There it is. It's going to be pretty great. Yeah, it's going to be a great shot, and then it stops. So this is kind of the thought process that you need to go through. are we going to see it? How close is the camera going to be to that feature? If it's pretty far away, we'll keep it relatively low resolution. You know, don't spend a lot of time modeling the back of your house. If you're not going to see the back of the house in the render, why spend all of your time budget, if you will, on something that the render engine is never going to see? Okay. All right. Let's get back to modeling, huh? Sorry, I got to hit don't save 1,000 times. I'm using a certain bit of technology here that's kind of neat. It allows me to reference project files, and it's really rad. Okay. So there it is. There's the walls of my house. Okay. And you know, the moment I drop the tool, we're going to get traditional polygons, and that's kind of the benefit of working with the pen tool. We're not going to get some sort of abstract 3D component within our scene that's very difficult to work with. With this shape, what do I need to do to make it into a three-dimensional object? Bevel. Yeah, we can just bevel it up, right, to bring that shape into 3 dimensions. Check it out. I'm going to grab my polygons, double-click on the shape, fire off the bevel tool, and then just perform a simple shift, and there it is. Okay, so pop quiz. What is the difference between the bevel tool and the extrude tool? Has anyone discovered this?
You're not going to have, on the underside, if you bevel, you're not going to have the closed polygon.
There it is. Okay, so I created this shape with the bevel tool. And if we examine the bottom of our shape, check it out. It's open. Okay, specifically what I'm talking about are those two loops right there. It's completely hollow. The walls are open, okay, on the underside, which isn't really a bad thing for us in this particular situation because we're never going to see the underside of the house, right? So it's kind of wasted space to a certain degree. It's polygons that we're never ever going to see. However, it would be nice to have polygons over there because the loop slice tool works better when there's a loop of polygons around every single part of this object, okay? So I like to have polygons down there while I'm modeling, and then usually 9 times out of 10, you know, there's not enough down there to really worry about. So you can delete them, you can keep them there. So let me step back and show you what the extrude tool is going to do. So I've gone back in time. Now I just have that 2-dimensional shape once again. Okay. The extrude tool you can find inside your polygon tools. And let's see. Or mesh edit, I'm sorry, yes, mesh edit, and there it is right there. Keyboard shortcut is Shift X. X is an X-ray. And when we extrude our object, it's going to seem like we're getting something that's very, very similar to the bevel tool. And you're right, you do get a certain degree of similarity between the two. However, we can also shift this object along all 3 axes. Okay, that's pretty rad. But here's the big difference between the two. Boom. It generates polygons along the bottom where the bevel tool did not. So pick and choose which tool you want to use. They both give you similar results, the only difference being that bottom strip of polygons along our shape. Okay. All right. So this is all well and good, but you know, last time I checked, you really don't see homes that look like that, right? If you look at the interior of this, if you just look at this building, okay, it's pretty cubic. It's pretty square, okay? There's a lot of, architects, they like to have 90-degree corners, and they like to have edges that have a certain, certain degree of consistency across the entirety of their shape. So we need to work with a little bit more accuracy. The default values of the pen tool are going to allow us to create shapes like this, kind of, custom crazy shapes, okay? But what if I wanted to have 2 walls that were perfectly 90 degrees perpendicular to each other, okay? Well, in order to get access into that world, we have to enable our snapping tools. Now, the snapping system inside of Modo is really strong. I like the snapping system. It gives us access to some pretty neat things. I'm going to delete that shape and zip back over to top view again to start showing you guys how to work with the snapping tools. Okay. The snapping tools inside of Modo are really more like a snapping architecture. It's one of those layers inside the tool pipe that affects everything. So we have to be careful when we activate the snapping system because all of our tools are going to behave just a little bit differently depending on the values and the parameters of our snapping system. Now, it is a toggle. It is an on or off thing, okay? So this is another big, big difference from that of other traditional 3D modeling applications. You either turn the snapping system all the way on or it's all the way off, okay? You can find the toggle for your snapping system right here in the interface, the big button that says snapping. This is just activating it and deactivating it, okay? The keyboard shortcut is the X key, X as in X-ray. So you have two different ways of turning it on. Just activate snapping, turn it off, or hitting the X key. I prefer to hit the big button up there at the top of the screen. I'm a mouse guy for the most part, so I like hitting the big button. All right. Now on the surface, it doesn't seem like anything's happened, and well, you're kind of right. Nothing really has happened. We've turned on the system. Now we need to go in and define the parameters that are going to tell the system how to behave, what to snap to. Okay. In order to do that, we have to go into our snapping options, and you can find those inside of our options toolbar. And you can see the keyboard shortcut right there. It's F11. Okay. The snapping options toolbar has a lot of really neat things in here. Okay. That's what it looks like. It's going to look a little bit differently for you guys in 601, but all of the basic features are identical. They've changed the interface and just the way the computer is drawing it here in 701. But function identical. Okay. Let me zoom in and we can take a look at some of the things that we need to look at. Okay. All right. As you can see, the snapping system is really broken up into a whole series of sections in this little form. And for today, I think what we want to really focus on is the first section. This first section is going to define what we're snapping to within the scene. So you can see that we have none. And none actually has a role. We'll come back to that later. We can also have our tools snap to our grid. It's pretty neat. Okay, so we can just, if we wanted that to turn on, we just click on that button. We can also snap to pivot points, pieces of geometry, and then components of geometry. So if we only want to snap to polygons, we can do that, which is pretty neat. So it's a flexible tool that allows us to snap to the elements within our three-dimensional scene that we want it to. I want to just turn on snap to grid because I think that's a really neat one. Okay, and definitely something that is applicable for us here in the architectural visualization world. So it works in tandem with all of our tools. I activated the snapping engine. I told the snapping engine to snap to my grid. And now check it out. See that little cross? Let me turn on my grid. I apologize. There we go. You see that little cross that shows up underneath my mouse cursor? That's the snapping engine. And let me zoom in so you guys can see what I'm talking about. See the little yellow cross, dotted cross? That's the snapping engine. Okay? Right now, if you look very carefully, the computer is snapping between all the different grid squares inside my OpenGL viewport. Okay? All right. It's a toggle, so if you wanted to deactivate the snapping system, just hit the button again. The pen tool will stay active, which is kind of neat. Boom. So we can turn it on and off at will. So now the snapping engine isn't being evaluated within my scene. I can turn it on while the pen tool is still active, snap to some other points, turn it off, and now I can continue defining and working with these points without the snapping engine on at all. Okay? So it's a really flexible system, and I like it. I like it a lot. Okay? The snapping engine allows us to activate some really cool functions inside the pen tool because I'm still not getting those perfect 90-degree corners that I'm after. Okay, check it out. It's pretty neat. I want you to continue to look at some of the additional pen tool options right below. And specifically where I'm going here is pen snap. This guy. Inside of pen snap, we have 3 different options, and right now I've deactivated the snapping system. And you can see that they're grayed out. Okay? So I'm in pen snap. These 3 options are turned off because the snapping engine is not on. How do I turn the snapping engine back on? I'm in the pen tool options. Pen tool options. So keep cruising down that list.
There, but I'm not seeing pen snap.
It might be cut off on your interface. those little double arrows at the bottom of your screen will continue to expand and show the interface. Did you find it? Great, perfect. So how do I turn the snapping engine on? X, okay. Hit the X key, snapping engine's on, boom, and you can see that those three options have become ungrayed and now they're being applied within our scene. If you look at them, these three options allow us to achieve that level of accuracy that we're really going for. And each one of them is going to allow us to snap our control vertices to a whole series of different elements within the scene. Okay, so we have the world axis snap. This is going to ensure that it's kind of like the grid snap. Okay, it's going to snap to all of our local axes. Straight line snap, I love this. Okay, straight line snap. You see the little, it may be difficult to see on the projector. You'll probably see it on your local monitor, but there's a little purple line that's being created within the scene. That little purple line is showing you when you have a straight line. Or, if you look carefully, and I apologize, I can't show you and walk over, because the moment I mouse up, they're going to go away. It's also showing you a little purple triangle or purple squares in the corners, right? If you go back to 10th grade geometry, you have that perfect 90-degree cube in the corner between two lines. What does that say? They're perpendicular to each other. They're precisely 90-degree angles to each other, which is kind of neat. And Modo is communicating that information to us. On my screen right now, or when I had my mouse cursor down, I had two purple cubes, one in this corner and then one in this corner. They really don't look perpendicular to the world axes, right? But they're perpendicular to each other, which is pretty cool. Okay.
That was which option on the snapping?
I believe it's right angle snap. Right angle snap is going to give you those little right angle indicators in the corners of all your edges, which is pretty neat.
I don't seem to be. I'm getting a line.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not getting the internal square, the right angle snap.
Yeah.
And I went into F11 and it's checked.
It's checked to grid snap. So it's only something that you're going to see while your mouse cursor, while you're clicking down. So I'm clicking up right now, and I don't have it. But now I'm clicking down, and it is very, very faint. It's very, very faint.
In fact, I don't even have. Okay, I must have missed something because I don't have the crosshairs either.
The crosshairs. That's my grid snap going. Okay, that yellow crosshair. Okay. Let me change some of this real fast so we can see what's up. All right. Does anyone else have any questions on how to use the snapping tools?
Okay, now it's doing. I wasn't even getting the crosshairs earlier, so.
Yeah. Zoom out a little bit. It may be that your shape is so small that it's not drawing it.
I'm doing those. So this is a 10-foot span across
10 foot.
this.
Yeah.
So it is not the biggest thing, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to fiddle with the tool.
Yeah. You got it though. It is working the way it should be. It may not be. Let's see. Bring like that control vertice.
This one?
Yeah. Bring it like way down. So there it is. You see it?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
now
I
if
do,
if
yes, I
you
do.
yeah
If I go
right
here-
there, that means that if you put your cursor on top of that purple little cross,
Which it won't.
Which it won't do.
It's trying to go to the snap to the grid.
yeah.
Okay.
But you saw the little
But I can move
little
this
90-degree.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So actually, Brandon just kind of interfaced with something that can be a little bit of a nightmare. He had his grid snap on, and the computer was trying to snap to the grid points, but Brandon wasn't able to put his control vertice where he needed it to be in order to get the 90-degree angles on those walls. So that's why being able to turn your snapping engine on and off is invaluable. In addition, we can also change what we're snapping to interactively, because we want to keep the snapping engine on to get those 90-degree indicators and to get the world axis snap, the straight line snaps. But sometimes we don't need it to snap to the grid, or the grid just gets in the way. So this is why we have this option for none. Okay? with the snapping system set to none, where it's basically giving us access to all three of these parameters without having to force us to snap all of our points to the predetermined grid squares inside of our scene. So I can still snap to straight lines, which are pretty cool. There we go. You can see now I'm getting my little right angle indicator on my object. It's just giving us a tremendous amount of flexibility. Okay. Can you guys see that little purple cross kind of down in the lower right-hand portion of my screen? It's right above the control vertices that I'm working with. Can you guys see that? I know it's really small and kind of faint. That purple cross and that line is telling us that if I was to place my control vertice at the location of that cross, I'd get that 90-degree snap in the corner, or I'd get that 90-degree angle in the corner on the left. So it's kind of giving us a preview. It's saying, hey, if you were to put it up over there, it'd be 90 degrees to the corner on the left. So it's kind of helping you out. It really is a super intelligent system. I dig it. I dig it. It's pretty great. All right. So I want to drop the tool and then deactivate the snapping system by hitting the X button. And we're going to continue on. All right. So there's my guy. There's my guy. I think I'm going to just make another shape here real fast. Get ready for the next little section here. Yeah, something that looks like that. There we go. I'm happy with that. That's going to be the footprint for my house. Okay. So while we're modeling our homes, we can't forget about our core modeling technique, right? We can't forget to not center our objects. We can't forget to work at the origin of the scene. The entire system is going to work better if we do that. So don't forget to center things as we're going through this modeling process. I'm going to go in and just very quickly use my basic center selected tool to get my little footprint where I need it to be, right there in the center of my scene. Fantastic. This is looking pretty great. So I want to extrude my walls here and just give it a height. Okay. And again, this is really where having a real-world measurement system at the core makes it easy. You know, we can quickly define the height of all of our rooms. Okay. Like I know in my house, I have 10-foot ceilings in my house. This is like probably a 15-foot ceiling in here. So being able to measure very quickly and have those measurements be reflected into our model allows us accuracy. It really does. And don't forget that you can actually use the input fields here to quickly establish that. So if I want my walls to be, let's just say 10 feet, boom. If I hit the return key, it'll automatically move those walls to that point. Extrude, absolutely. Extrude.
So you said for like 10-foot walls, right?
Yep. And hit the return key. That's something a lot of folks miss. They just enter it in and they expect it to update. It's not going to update until you hit the return key.
On what axis?
I did it on the Y. On the Y. Up. So we raise a question, what if we don't know what those values are, or what if we have it 11 feet, or what if the height of our walls is 12 feet 8 inches and we need it to be 10? How do we refine our model and get all of those elements where we need them to precisely be?
Can you tell me again, okay, so if I'm putting in a calculation on the y-axis to get this thing to be say I want it to be a 2-foot wall.
Uh-huh.
And I put in the 2 feet on y-axis and then do what? Because it's not changing it.
Hit the return key on your keyboard. Enter.
And it goes to 24.
Inches.
Yeah, it sure did. 2
Yeah.
feet. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, the default cutoff value inside of Modo is 36 inches. So if you put 2 feet, it's going to show up as 24. If you put 3 feet 3 inches, it's going to show up as, or if you put, excuse me, if you put 3 feet, it's going to show up as 36 inches. However, if you put 37 inches, it's going to show up as 3 feet 1 inches. So 36 inches is kind of the cutoff point between when it's going to describe that value as inches and feet. All right, so what if we mess up? What if we don't even know the height of our walls and we need to get them to a very specific height within our scene? Well, we need to work with some accuracy, and this is kind of where being a mechanically operated person kind of comes in handy. Okay, I want to have my walls be at a very, very specific height within my scene. Modo has an option and an ability for it to go in and to define precisely where any polygon, or specifically where any vertice within that polygon is located within our three-dimensional world. I want my computer to go in and analyze and figure out precisely where that vert is, okay, and its value along the y-axis, because if I need to change it numerically, I need to know what number to insert. Okay, so where does that guy exist within the scene? I want my walls to be a little bit lower. Maybe I want my walls to be 8 feet, and maybe I don't even know what value, what location all of these vertices are. So check it out. This is actually kind of neat. If I wanted to figure out precisely where that vert is living within the scene, I'm going to select it. Everything begins and ends with a selection. So I've selected that vertice, and check it out. This is one of those features that I wish every 3D modeling app would have, because it makes infusing a high level of accuracy into our scenes possible. Okay, so I've selected that vert, and if I go over to the lower right-hand corner of my interface, of course I have my lovely Lists tab. And when we were describing the function of the Lists tab a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that it's kind of a utility area. It's an area for us to get specific information about specific 3D components within the scene. And it's a little bit buried, and it's kind of one of those elements that I wish it wasn't so buried. So I'm in Lists, and then way down here at the bottom, we have two different menus. We have Statistics, and we have Info. I love Info. Info is one of my favorite because it's going to give us information about the selected component within the scene, and what we're trying to capture here is its Y value, its Y position within the scene. Now check it out. If you look carefully down within this scroll list, it's telling us, I'll make it bigger so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see. It's telling us the coordinates, if you will, for the selected vertice. Okay? You can see its location along the x-axis. You can see its coordinate, its location along the y, and of course along the z. This is fantastic because now we can set these vertices, or at least know where these vertices are within our three-dimensional viewport. Okay, it's really neat, and it's an input field that we can copy and paste. So we can very quickly go in and say, okay, I want to copy that value. You know, there's no way in the world I'm remembering 7 feet 9.25 inches. Okay. So being able to copy and paste these values is really neat. Okay, so this is where we have to go to get specific information on the location of vertices within the scene.
Why would you be copying and pasting?
Okay, let me show you why. Great question. Beautiful segue. What if you mess up? What if you do something like this? Your model's all screwed up. You have some inconsistency across the entire surface. Okay. I need that entire top section to be flat. Precisely flat. Precisely flat. Okay. Perfectly level. Okay. Since the computer knows where all these vertices are, I can use that value to level off my roof, okay, or to level off the walls and return them back to their original configuration. Check it out. So maybe I want all the polygons along the top of my wall here, all of these guys, to be that height. So the height of this one right here. Well, I don't know what that height is, okay? I have to do it mechanically. So if I go in, select that vertice, the Info tab is going to tell me right there what the height is. Okay, so it's 4 feet, 5.5 inches. I'm just going to copy it. Command-C, Control-C for you guys on a PC. And now, check it out. I want to select all the polygons that I want to work with. And then over in our toolbar, the vertex tools give us one of my faves. And I use this all the time, especially for architectural stuff. Set position. And what this is going to do is going to take all the vertices on the selection, in our case polygons, and place them at a very specific value within the scene. Well, I know the height value. I copied it a moment ago. If I paste it into this value input box, paste it, there it is, 4 feet, 5.5 inches, along the y-axis, okay, vertical up and down. Then when I hit OK, boom. They're all flat. They're all level. They're all precisely the exact same height because I set their location within the scene to that value. Maybe I want these guys to be back to 10 feet, precisely at 10 feet. You know, I could use the move tool and kind of guess, okay? I don't like to guess. I like to accuracy. So if I, with my selection kind of set, I can go to set position. Now I'm just going to insert 10 feet along the Y. Boom. Now I know beyond any reasonable doubt that the location of all of my selected polygons is precisely at 10 feet along the vertical y-axis. Allows us to put selected geometry where we need it to be within the scene. Gives us accuracy. Questions? Can I kind of understanding the system a little bit? All right, let's take a break. I've been yakking for about an hour. Let's just take a short little break, okay? Okay, guys, let's get back to it, shall we? Let's hit it. Mika, that is awesome. I love that. That's very rad. I love it. Beautiful work. Beautiful work. Alrighty, guys, let's get back to it, shall we? There's some fun things that we got to continue to talk about today. We've been focusing primarily kind of on, on working with pen tool, but that's just one tool that we need to really have mastery on before we really can start making these architectural visualizations come to life. Now, last time I checked, most houses have doors and windows, and we need to figure out a way for us to very quickly slice up our mess and get those doors and windows across our building. Now, we have to be careful, though. We can't just do this willy-nilly. We have to infuse a certain level of accuracy and a degree of realism into this next operation, because think about it, okay? On your house, are all the windows roughly the same size? Roughly. Roughly. In most houses, if you look critically at the windows in a home, at the very least, they're all going to be the same height, okay? In my living room, I have, I think, 4 different banks of windows. And depending on the size of the wall, that's going to influence the size of the window. So the widths of the windows are a little bit different, but the heights of the windows are identical. They're all the same. So we have to have a nice level of consistency there along our mesh. That's a detail that we can very, very easily replicate and infuse in our model if we start thinking strategically, okay? Over the last couple of weeks, we talked a lot about loop slice, and I'm a big fan of loop slice. Loop slice gives us the accuracy that we need in a lot of situations. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We can absolutely use a loop slice in this this step. So maybe I want to start going in and slicing my house, because this is going to be the blueprint for my house, or the floor plan for my house. So if I select those 2 polygons, fire off loop slice, I'm going to do, let's see, I need to have it be a count of free, or excuse me, a mode of free with a count of 2. That way I can go in and just figure out where I want my windows to be, okay? And I gotta apologize, my interface is chopping off. Let me see if I can fix it here. There it is. Cool. All right. So loop slice is going to do us a really great job as to getting these edge loops precisely where we need them to be. I can continue to define their location within the scene just by moving them around. Okay, there we go. That's great. Maybe that's the height of my window. That's how tall I want my window to be. We've defined the top edge of my window, the bottom edge of my window. That was easy to do with loop slice. What's challenging to do with loop slice, especially across the entirety of a house, is to establish the width, okay? I want all the windows on my house to be exactly the same size, okay? So using our traditional slicing tools aren't going to give us the accuracy and the result that we need, okay? I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, so loop slice, good in a lot of situations, bad in this particular one, okay? Because I want a little uniformity in my windows. In addition, it didn't loop the inside of my walls, right? I want to have my windows completely penetrate through the walls. I want an opening in my walls, okay? So in this particular situation, loop slice really isn't going to give us the result that we need, okay? Because we're going to have to do another loop slice on the interior, and then we have to go in and figure out, maybe the height of the loop on the outside and ensure it's the same size. I mean, it turns into an organizational workflow mess. Let me show you an alternative that's pretty rad. They're called Booleans, and Booleans allow us to slice up our mesh based on some very specific ideas. I'm just going to step back in time for a second and remove those 2 loops, and this is what we have. Okay. All right. Booleans are really neat. Booleans allow us to slice our geometry based on the shape of another piece of geometry, a disconnected piece of geometry. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make some boxes that roughly match the size of the window that I want. And I'm going to use that box to slice up my mesh. Okay, check it out. So let's make the window here. I think I want to have, let's see, Yep, I want to have, this is going to be this polygon here is going to be the front of my house. So I want a window kind of over here, and I need the exact same window over here, and then, shoot, why not? I want windows along this side and this side as well. Okay, so I have a lot of windows that all need to be the exact same size. Booleans allow us to do this quickly. The first thing that we got to do when we're working with Booleans is get a little organized. Okay, this is going to be an item-to-item operation. So we need to have these pieces of geometry on separate layers within our scene. So since we're making separate layers, let's name them. Staying organized inside of Modo is always a good idea. I'm going to call this house. Okay. And I'm going to create another new mesh item. And I'm going to call this mesh cutter. Cutter. Because these, think of a Boolean kind of like a knife. Okay? We're physically going to cut another piece of geometry. Okay? So we have to have them on separate mesh items. If you're watching some of the other videos on the web, you'll hear people, even the Luxology guys will say that this is the foreground mesh item. This is the background mesh item. Okay? We always want, so I'm going to end up selecting this guy here in a minute. So there's foreground and background mesh items depending on what we have selected. Whatever is selected is the foreground mesh item. All right. So here we go. On my cutter mesh item, I'm physically going to make the windows the size that I want them. I'll zip over to the front here, and I'm just going to do this arbitrarily. Yeah, that looks good. Something like that. That looks like a window. I'm also going to determine its height within the scene. There we go. I like that. Okay. And I'm also going to give it a little bit of depth like this. Since we're going to be using this cube to cut one of our walls, we need to have the location of this cube be in a very, very specific place. And this is where people mess up all the time. The objects that are going to cut our other pieces of geometry need to intersect the walls. So we need to have them go all the way through. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So there's my window, if you will. I need this shape to be intersecting the walls. Okay, so it needs to go through it like that. Okay, I'm looking at the scene from the top, and you can see that that cube is now intersecting that wall in its entirety. Okay, so it needs to go through it. All right, pretty great. But I need a whole bunch of these. Or let's just do the Boolean operation so you guys can see what it looks like. So there's my cutter piece of geometry. As soon as I'm done with it, I'm going to return to my item list and select my house layer. And that's what we get. So your house needs to be in the foreground. It needs to be selected in the item list. And your cutting geometry, that other mesh item, needs to be in the background or unselected, as you can see here. Kind of make sense? With this relationship established, we now can fire off the Boolean operator. Okay? We can fire off a Boolean by going to the top of the screen where it says geometry. At the bottom of this list, we have the Boolean operators. Okay? And there's three of them. There's axis drill, solid drill, and Boolean. Each one of these has a different set of rules that's going to determine the outcome of its function. I want to draw your attention to solid drill. This is my favorite. I'm a big fan of solid drill. Okay? Solid drill is going to give us the most flexibility in the end. Okay? So we're going to activate solid drill. And we're going to get a popover. There it is. That's what this popover. Okay? So we have more options, and this gets a little confusing, so I bear with me. Bear with me. The most important thing about this little popover is the drive mesh. Right now, see, it's set to background. Okay, this is what we want. It's going to take the black outline, the outline of the background geometry, and it's going to cut our foreground geometry from it. Okay, how it's going to do that is based on this operation. Right now, it's set to core. You can do that. That's fine. I won't screw anything up. My favorite is stencil and slice. I love those because they give us the most flexibility after the tool is finished doing what it's doing. Okay? I want to change my operation over to stencil or slice. We'll just do stencil for the time being, and then I'll hit OK. Now, can you see what's happened on my foreground mesh? I want to deactivate the visibility of my cutter mesh item. Check it out. Ta-da! It sliced my geometry. It cut it precisely where that cube was inside of our three-dimensional scene. So I now have a cube inside of my walls. Okay. Now, because that cutter geometry penetrated through the entirety of my walls, check it out. The inside of my mesh also cut. Okay. So I have a square there and a square there. Now, this little edge here, the computer automatically created. You're going to have that. You can't avoid it. It might be in a different location. It's always going to have to take, it's always going to connect the corner of your window to another edge or the closest vertice on that surface. We have to deal with it. It's a pain in the butt. We're going to remove it later, but it's something that we're going to need to keep for the time being. Okay? So this is really kind of the benefit of working with these Booleans, is that it's going to allow us to very quickly go in and slice our geometry based on the location, size, and shape of another piece of geometry. Okay? Pretty rad. Okay? Check it out. So there's the two pieces, the polygons that I worked with. Now I need to make a window from those two polygons. How do I do it? Got to bridge them. I like it. So we have a couple different options here. Let me show you the long way of doing it, and then I'll show you the short way. So if we go in, we can delete them. Okay, and now I have an opening, but we don't have any sort of thickness on our walls. It's just kind of hollow in here. So I'm just going to bridge it. Select those two edges. If I fire off the bridge command with a segment set to 1 or 0, it's right here in the basic tool tabs. It's bridge right there. You can find it in a couple other places, but it's in the basics as well. And I love bridge. Bridge is basically going to allow you to take two edge segments and connect them with a polygon. So you can go around your mesh, just bridge all those guys together, and you're on your way. So now we have an opening in our wall. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just using bridge. I'm selecting a couple edges, firing off bridge, and then you have to left click in your viewport to fill those two, to fill the opening with a polygon. Or 0. Yeah. If you have any sort of value in there for segments, so I have my segment set to 1 at the moment. Check it out. So there it is with the segment set to 1. If I was to increase the segment to 2, I get another line kind of cruising down there in the center. So you're adding more edge spans, more edge segments within the new polygon that you're asking the tool to create. There we go.
So now I'm stuck. My bridge tool's stuck. I got one segment to go, and I didn't do the other.
So we have to be careful as to which edges we're selecting. When you're selecting your edge, you always want to select the edge that you would like the polygon to be connected to. So kind of, I'm selecting the front one, and then its counterpart on the opposite side of the wall. Figure it out? Yes. All right, brilliant, great. Let me show you one other trick, and this is something that's kind of cool. This is one of those tricks that I wish someone would have shown me when I was first learning how to work with the bridge tool. Initially, you use the bridge tool with an edge selection, but as the bridge tool has been refined over the years of development, the guys down at Luxology have changed the function of the bridge tool a little bit. Okay, I'm going to hit undo. Yeah, there we go. So I've got my scene back to the moment immediately after the Boolean operation. You can see the outlines of my window, so I haven't deleted those two polygons. If you select them, as I have here, check it out. Fire the bridge tool now. It'll do the work for you. So here's this is an extension or a refinement of the bridge tool. Originally, we used the bridge tool a lot with edges, but they've also allowed us to start bridging polygons now, and it works beautifully in this application for Windows. So here's those two polygons that I deleted earlier. I went back in time, I got them back. With them selected, I can fire off the bridge tool and just click, and it saves me a couple steps. It does the rest of the work for me. It bridged the opening automatically. Pretty cool.
So go all the way back to where there's
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I want to keep moving on because I have a lot of windows to do. I don't want to do them all individually because that'd be a pain in the butt, right? Especially when you have a lot of them. And I'm going to probably have 8 or 9 windows on this house by the time I'm done. So I need to think of a way for me to work quickly through this process. And this really is where the power of Booleans come in, because I can use one piece of geometry over and over and over again to block out the location and the openings for all of the windows in my house pretty much at the exact same time. Since Booleans allow us to use geometry to influence other pieces of geometry, well, let's just duplicate that window. I want to duplicate that window a number of times and place it where I want all of my windows to be. And I could even do this with a high level of accuracy if I wanted to. Okay, check it out. If you look carefully, I have a window here. I'm looking at my scene from the top, and I've selected my window. I need to have a duplicate of this shape on the opposite side of my house. Okay, I want this window over here. Okay, I could move it, right? I could select it. I could move it on the other side of the house. Life's good. Do the Boolean operator. I'm on my way, right? But that infuses human error. What if I'm off? What if the distances aren't correct? I'd much rather have the computer figure out the location of this window on the opposite side of the x-axis for me. Okay? This process of duplicating geometry across an axis is called mirroring. Mirroring, and I love mirroring. Okay? Allows me to make copies of one side of my mesh onto the other side of my scene quickly. I would encourage you to use the mirror duplication tool in tandem with the origin action center. It makes it a little bit more accurate. Okay, so I got my window selected. If I go to the duplication tools, you can see that the mirror command is the second one from the top, right under radial sweep that we were exploring last week. So I want to turn on mirror, and before I left click in the viewport, I want to change my action center to origin. That way, the tool handle goes right smack dab in the middle of my scene. Since I positioned my house automatically at the origin of my scene, I should have a copy, a direct copy of this window in precisely the spot that I want. Now that I have my action set to origin, I'm going to click over here. And boom, you can see what the computer's done. It's made another copy of this, but it's analyzed the distance that this object is from the origin, and it's putting the duplicate precisely where I need it to be, on the opposite side of the x-axis. Just make sure your mirror generator is set to x, and you're on your way. Okay?
Mine put mine right in the corner.
Right in the corner. This is only really going to work if your house is perfectly centered around the origin of your scene. So triple check that. That is step numero uno for everything. If you're not modeling at the origin, these tools aren't going to work the way that I'm demonstrating here. Okay, so we can continue to work with this throughout the entirety of the house, because really what I'm going to craft here is that I'm going to figure out the position of all of these of all the windows on one side of the house, and then I'm going to mirror them across the other side of the house. In essence, I'm doing half the work. I love that. I love that. And I also get the accuracy that I need. I can guarantee to my client that the left side is identical to the right side. It seems silly, but it can be kind of a challenge if you don't use these accuracy tools the way you need to. Okay. So I'm going to copy this guy. So I'm going to work on this side of the house. Now I already have an opening over here, so I think I'm not going to copy it. I'm just going to move this guy where I need him to be. All right. I'm going to move him. And it doesn't matter where along the z-axis at the moment I move this, but I do want the shape intersecting the wall, and I need to rotate it 90 degrees. There we go. All right. Now I've got to figure out where my windows on this side of the house are going to go. Let's see. Probably want one there. Looks pretty good. That kind of makes sense. And of course, your architect is going to give you more specific details, but since I'm playing the role of the architect, I'm just going to kind of guess. I'm doing what I hate to do, and I'm eyeballing it. I hate eyeballing it. There we go. All right. Rock and roll. I love it. Okay. So now I want three windows evenly spaced along that wall right there. Evenly spaced. Evenly spaced. How am I going to do that? Three, though. Three. I need three of them. If I needed two, yeah, then mirror may be working. That may be where I want to go. Clone, absolutely, because clone allows us to duplicate objects in straight line. This is a straight line. Perfect application of the clone tool. I want to go back to my cutter mesh. Grab my window, my cube here, and I'm going to clone that bad boy. All right. I want to show you a really neat feature of clone because we've been messing around with clone before. Clone's cool. It just allows us to make copies in straight lines. Okay. They're all evenly spaced, which is what I want. Okay, evenly spaced. However, and this is the, if you kept adding clones, it's always going to add that new clone on to the end of your row, right? But what if I want, what if I want to have, or what if I want to visually determine the beginning and the end of the row of windows? Check this out. This is actually kind of neat. I like this. It's a neat addition to our tool set. We have this option down here called between. Between. So now it's going to create two windows. Oops, let me go back in time a little bit here. I'm hitting undo now. I apologize. Between. There we go. And I'm rotating it. I apologize. All right. Now, with the between option is enabled, we're determining the location of the first one and the location of the last one. And then the computer is figuring out where to evenly distribute any sort of clone that happens between that one and that one. Okay? Check it out. Watch what happens when I add another clone into the mix. It's not going to be created after clone number 3. It's going to be made in the middle. It's going to evenly space out all the clones so that they perfectly fit within or between number 1 and number 2. Or number 1 and now number 4. So it's kind of a cool option. I like that. All right, let's put my clones back down to 3 here. I only want 3. Yeah, and I think I kind of want the spacing somewhere like that. All right. Now, my OCD is kicking in, and I'm going a little bit crazy here, okay? Because I like straight lines. I get really obsessive about straight lines and distribution of these lines along our surfaces. I'm both the right person and the wrong person to be a 3D modeler, okay? It's kind of crazy. Sometimes I make life for me much harder than it needs to be. My brain is telling me that the distance between that black line and this corner is different than this line and that corner, okay? This space is bigger. I need to fix this, okay? I need to have all three of these windows centered along this wall, okay? Along this wall right here. This is really neat. You guys are going to like this. It's kind of this takes the power of the Modo modeling toolset to the umpteenth level. It's really neat. In a lot of applications, figuring out the center point of a location of a very specific piece of geometry is a challenge, okay? In Modo, it's really easy if we use the work plane accordingly. The work plane is more than just an interactive snapping guide. The work plane, in many ways, as you guys have experienced earlier, is a tool that allows us to create geometry orientated along the axes that we need them to be initially. But we can also use the work plane as an element to help us position objects within the scene. The work plane can move, and we want it to move, okay? With its default values enabled, the work planes doesn't seem like it has much of a role inside of our system. But in actuality, the work plane has a lot of consistent components that we're used to seeing in other locations. Specifically, the work plane has an origin. It has a center point. We can't see it initially, but it does. All planes have a center point. I want the center of my work plane, which is the only element, the only snapping guide within inside of our system that can move. I want the center of that work plane to be in the center of this polygon. Okay? Well, how do I do that, you say? Well, it's really easy to do it. And everything in Modo starts and ends with a selection. So if I select that polygon, the wall that I want my windows to be perfectly aligned to.
And you're on house windows?
I'm on house. Yep. I'm on house. Okay. Now check it out. At the top of our screen, we have this really awesome pull-down menu called Work Plane. Okay. And inside that pull-down menu, there's a number of tools that allow us to change the location and the role of the work plane inside of our three-dimensional scene. I want to align the work plane to the currently selected object in the scene, that polygon that I had selected a moment ago, right? I'm going to choose Align Work Plane to Selection. Now, FYI, before you click on this button, please make sure your OpenGL viewport is set to perspective, because it's going to whack out all of your orthographic viewports, as your scene is seemingly going to look odd. Okay? Go into perspective, and you'll see what precisely is happening pretty easily. So I'm going to go Align Work Plane to Selection. Oh, my work plane's off. I apologize. And there it is. You can see that that never-ending, infinite light gray grid is now perfectly sucked and aligned to the selected polygon. It's on that exterior wall. Now, what you don't see here is the center of the work plane. It has a center point. It's there. I guarantee it. Well, luckily for us, the guys down at Luxology understand the power of the work plane. They understand that people like using the work plane to give us the accuracy that they need, but it's kind of conceptual. We don't really see the center. If you go back to that work plane pull-down menu at the top of the screen, work plane, check it out. At the very bottom of this menu, there's Draw Axis. We'll get a little indicator, okay? That little indicator is showing us where the center of the work plane currently is residing. And it's also communicating the orientation of the local XYZ axis to the work plane. Okay? This is why going in and out of your orthographic viewports is going to give you a much different result. I know that this part of my model is positive Y. But right now, because I've orientated my work plane to this polygon, it's kind of flipped around all of my axes to really weird locations. So just be aware of that, okay? Now that I have my work plane orientated where I need it to be, I can use it, okay? Check it out. I'm going to go into my cutter mesh, and I'm going to grab all three of those guys, okay? Since the work plane has a center point, we can use that center point to align objects quickly inside of our scene, okay? Believe it or not, when you're hitting center selected, you're not actually orientating and positioning your objects to the center of the origin of the scene. You're aligning them to the center of the origin, or the center of the work plane, whose default location is the origin of the scene. So in actuality, what you're doing is you're always centering your stuff to the origin of the work plane, not the center of your scene. So check it out. If I go basic, center selected. Now I got to be careful here. I got to look at the local orientation of my axes, and I know that I need to. I only want my little cubes to move along the local z-axis of my work plane. So I do center selected along the z. Boom, they move, and now I can breathe a sigh of relief.
Okay, now how do we get out of that without messing it up?
Yeah. So just go work plane, reset work plane. The moment you're done using the work plane to align objects within your scene, reset it. Because remember, every tool inside of Modo works off of or works in conjunction with the work plane. So if it's on a really weird alignment, all of your tools are going to have a really weird kind of operation. You align it to something, you use it to use the work plane to center another object, and then you reset it the moment that you're done. Okay?
Okay, so what do we do with the action axis origin again? Okay, because I've still got the toolbar like you do.
This guy. Yeah, and it's not a tool. It's a representation of the local orientation of the work plane. So if you go back to your work plane pull-down menu, just deselect draw axis, and that will go away. All right, this is looking pretty good. I'm really happy. Now I have these three windows precisely aligned where I need them to be. Yes, that makes me feel better now. I feel comfortable. Okay, I can see just visually that the distance between the outside window on the left is the same as the outside window on the right.
Now something happened with the geometry between my first window on my little what do you call them? Not doppelgangers. They're is this gonna have an effect on the opening?
Absolutely.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. What happened there?
I have no idea, but I copied that square
Uh-huh.
and then cloned it.
Yeah.
So this is still going to be... Oh,
That's
yeah,
still perfect. You haven't done the Boolean yet, so you haven't screwed up anything yet. So this actually gives us an opportunity to fix it before we do.
Okay.
Go in there. Let's look at some of those cubes. They may just be flipped. They look a little backwards to me.
They are jacked up. I don't know what happened with them. I literally copied and pasted them.
Okay.
No, I copied and pasted one and then cloned.
Clone that one, right. I tell you what, let's fix one, and then we can clone it. Yeah.
So we're going to go edges and go in and pull all that crud out of the middle?
You can. You can. That's a good one.
Not that one.
Not that one. It may just be... Interesting.
Really just crossed everything
Yeah.
out in the middle.
Okay.
Oops, that didn't necessarily work the way I wanted it to.
Let's see.
Okay, so that's what I've got.
Let's do this. I have another
Get rid
idea.
of this.
I have another idea here that might give us the result that we want.
All right.
Go into your polygonal selection set and select that polygon, or that. Perfect. Great. Let's go into your polygon set of tools and let's do this. In the double arrows, click on it to get the rest of the tools. Let's do reduce.
Okay.
And do merge. All right, what'd that get us?
Another mess of stuff.
Yeah.
It's got some weird little...
Yeah, you know what I would do in this particular situation, Brandon? I'd cut my losses, I'd just remake the cube. Yeah.
Okay. So when I have my work plane and then I have it centered.
Uh-huh.
Then when I go to
Yeah, okay, so if this is the center of your work plane,
yeah,
okay?
on this selection.
Do it again. Ah, it got moved somehow, because now it's centered to that wall.
Right, so
Okay.
this-
It's going to continue to do exactly.
Interesting. Interesting.
definitely not the center.
That's definitely not the center.
But when I reset the plane,
Goes back to the origin.
yeah.
Okay. You had it once.
Well,
I wonder if
that's
it's-
when I went. That's when I deselected and went like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if the opening down there is messing with it a little bit. It shouldn't be. Let's try this. Instead of doing a polygonal selection, reset it again. I want you to grab just the edges of that wall. those guys. Now try it. See what happens. Yes, that looks better.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Okay. So it's still doing the same thing on copying, Command C. Now it's not going to do it. No, there we go.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure why it's doing that when I go
Me
to
neither.
paste.
Let's hit undo for me for a second here.
Okay. There's one.
Undo. And
And deselect. So
Cool.
if I come in and select it,
yep.
Command C, Command V.
Okay.
So
Let's
every
do this.
time I try to paste
Okay,
it,
okay.
it
Let's slow down for a second here. Hit undo.
Okay.
And this time, let's go to the top of the screen where it says edit. And hit paste. Or it's grayed out.
Let's see.
Oh, you were hitting
I'm a Mac.
Alt. Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah, that's it right there. Okay, let's keep cruising because there's a couple other things I want to talk about today. All right. Okay, so I have the windows where I want them to be. Now I can just mirror these windows across the x-axis, and I can guarantee that they're positioned within my house. Dialed. Perfect. Okay. Precisely where I want them to be. So I want to go to my duplication tools, mirror, action center back to origin. Click on that side of the house or along the x-axis there. Life is good. Now I have all the windows where I need them to be. Okay. So walk me through the process of doing the Boolean operation once more. What do I have to have selected within the scene in order for the Boolean to work correctly? Which is what? What needs to be the foreground object? Yeah, my house. My house layer has to be selected. The geometry that's going to be cutting. So think of it kind of like a cookie cutter, if you will. The cookie cutter has to be in the background. The cookie has to be in the foreground. And now I kind of really want a cookie. With my cookie cutter in the background, I can go to the top of the screen where it says Geometry, Boolean, Solid Drill. Now, last time we worked with the operation of stencil, but there are a couple other options in there that may give us a different result. And I encourage you to experiment with these different operations, okay? The Boolean tool is going to behave slightly differently depending on the conditions that it's currently operating within. So this is why you have to kind of experiment a little bit, because sometimes changing the operation to core is going to give you a really bad result. So you might want to change it to stencil or slice. But sometimes core and tunnel are cool. Check it out. Let's do core. So you went to geometry, Boolean, Boolean. Do geometry, Boolean, solid drill. Yeah. So now I'm in operation core. Oh, hello. What happened to my house? Yeah. No, I had the right layer selected. The selection order was correct. What did the operation do?
It gave you what you cut out of the wall.
Yeah, it deleted the house and left me with the window. Now my house is gone. Okay, let me hit undo one step. Let's go back in time. We'll do geometry. Oops. Boolean, solid drill. This time I'm not going to use core. Check out what tunnel does. Tunnel is going to do the opposite effect for me. It's going to slice my model where I need it to be, and it's automatically going to delete those interior polygons. Okay. So the solid drill command gives us a couple different options in here. Explore the other operators. We have the axis slice and of course the traditional Boolean tools. I like solid drill because it gives me the most options. Okay, it allows me to determine what the next step is going to be. Okay, I'm not a big fan of having it automatically slice all of those polygons for me, or excuse me, automatically delete all of those polygons on the interior of the window. It took out a certain level of control in my modeling operation. What if I wanted to make like a groovy little windowsill? What if I wanted to create some rails and some other window component types? Well, without those polygons there, I would have to infuse a couple new steps back into the mix. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. So all I'm going to do, geometry, Boolean, solid drill. And my two favorite are stencil and slice. Let's just do slice. Boom, and what we have is exactly what we need it to be. If I turn off my cutter mesh, you can see what I'm left with, just the cubic slices of all of my windows. They're all the exact same size because they were generated from the exact same Boolean shape. Awesome. Okay, now we have some precision. But what if I wanted to affect all the windows simultaneously? What if I wanted to maybe use some of those profiles that we were working with before? Maybe I can use some of those profiles to create really nice window openings and some window sills. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll do it on one. Do it on this front one. There we go. So I have both of those polygons selected, both the inside and outside ones selected. And if I fire off the bridge command, check it out. The bridge tool hooks in to that profile browser that we were working with back in the candlestick. Remember those? It's coming home to roost, this whole profile thing. Check it out. If I open it up, let's just use the bead and then left click. Now it's seemingly a little confusing. You're probably like, Pat, same thing that we had before, but left click and drag. You start adding additional edge segments into the bridge tool, and you can see that instantly there, I'm getting that bead. Oops, excuse me. That was just me being silly. And by left clicking and dragging, we're determining the quality of the bridge and how the profile is being applied to my window. Now in this particular situation, I don't think the bead profile is the applicable one, but it kind of illustrates what you can do very, very quickly with the tool set inside of Modo. It's all live, by the way, so I can change these profiles to be whatever I want and create something that's a little bit more compelling for the opening of my windows. Like that one's pretty neat. Okay, I like that. Let's see, let's say it's bead, and I have 20 segments. Let's see if I can do all of my windows at the exact same time. By selecting all of them. And now, let's run the bridge command once more. Bridge. Got my profile selected. Yowzers, kind of a mess. So we can't do them all at the same time. Although that is kind of neat abstract art. Okay, so can't do it all at the same time, but at least we know what the values are.
Did you try to bridge them all at the same time?
I did, and it really didn't work with the profile. It gave me something odd. So I'll just do it manually. Luckily, it's just one click. The computer is going to remember the properties of the tool the last time you used it. So if you just left click once, it'll fire off the exact same properties from the previous operation. Boom. So I know that all of my windows are going to be identical to each other. I wonder if I can do maybe all the windows on each wall. No.
Window profile exactly the same to another.
I've been doing that. Yeah, I just kept using. I just had the tool. I selected that polygon, applied the profile, dialed in my settings, and then the next time I reapplied the tool, it's going to remember those settings. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you cut the squares out again?
So the Booleans, let's do the Booleans one more time. Yeah, so I need a door. I need a door to my house, okay? I need a door, so let's iron out the door. I'm going to go back to my cutter geometry, and I'm going to delete almost all of these. I want to keep one just for me, because it's going to allow me to do something else here in a minute. Okay, so I need a door. Now, when you're doing your doors, you got to be very, very careful. The door still has to penetrate through the wall like the windows, okay? So I'm just going to use a cube, and I'm just going to eyeball it here. But we also want to make sure that the door goes below our house. Okay, and you'll see why here in a moment. There it is. There's the size of our door. I'm going to center this guy along the XZ axis. There we go. There it is. That way my house is a little bit more uniform. Excellent. And yeah.
Why would the orientation of my house have changed?
Did you reset the work plane?
I just did. I think
Yeah. And the orientation of the house didn't change. The orientation of your orthographic viewports did, which is probably why it seems funky.
Yeah, I reset it. It's
Perfect.
fine.
Now it's working now. Yeah. Okay. All right, Darren, this one's for you.
Does the door stay on the cutter?
Yeah, absolutely. So on my cutter mesh, I deleted everything except for one window, and I moved that one window away from my house. I always like to keep one piece just in case I need it again. That way I have it, just in case I need to make another window later on, right? Since it's out over here, it's not going to influence my house at all, okay? All right, so there's my door. So now I can go to my house layer, just make sure that's active. Make sure the visibility of my background mesh, my cutter mesh, is active. There we go. That door looks massive, looks too tall, so I'm going to move it down a little bit. Aha, okay, so pop quiz. I want to make you guys think. Sorry. So, what if my architect comes to me and says, Pat, you've done a great job, I love what you're doing, but I need the top of the door to be the exact same height as the top of the window on the right. I want them to be in the exact same location within the scene. How do I do that? Grab the top polygon on the window and line the work plane to it. Yep, that's one way of doing it. Okay, so what you're saying is do something like this. Grab that guy, align the work plane to selection. Okay, then what? Okay. Yep, so center selected along the y-axis. That will work, and it did move. It moved. That's fine. That's a great way of working. What's another way of working? What's another way of getting the exact same result? Align your work plane to the selection. Let's do it without using the work plane. I love it. So I can go to the window. I can select that, excuse me. I can select that vertice right there. And in the info window down here, I can just copy its Y value, right? In my case, it's 8 feet 8 inches. I'll copy that. And then I can go back to my cutter mesh, select the polygon that represents the top of my door, vertex tools, set position, paste it in along the Y, and then boom, it moved. Okay?
So can you go over that one more time from...
Of course. All right. So here's the top of my door. I need the top of my door to be in the exact same location, the exact same height as the top of my window. I don't know what that number is, and I don't want to do it by hand because I'm going to mess it up. Okay? As much as I'd like to think that'd be perfect, I'm not going to. Okay? So I want the computer to do it for us. So there's a couple ways we can do it, but what we just did is that I went to my house layer, selected that vertice in the corner. And then I went to my info palette. Here's the vertex that I selected. It's giving me all of its positional coordinates. And I'm just going to copy its Y value. Control C, Command C on a Mac. Now that I've captured that little chunk of information, I can go back to the polygon that represents the top of my door.
So we go back into cutter mesh.
Back into cutter mesh. I've selected that top polygon. And then in my vertex set of tools, I'm going to choose set position. Yep, and now I'm going to paste in that value along the y-axis. Hit OK. Boom. It moves it precisely to the exact same height as the top of my window. Two different ways of getting to the exact same result. If we look at our scene from the front.
When we do the boolean, the cutter as well.
Uh-huh.
With the door, even though we're going to have a solid material there.
I'm going to have an opening for my door. Often, if you look at the models that we make for architectural visualizations, the door is going to be its own separate, either separate mesh item or separate discontiguous polygonal piece. That way we can open it. Open and close it. We can pose the door where we want it to go. It's a good idea to have some of those basic movable parts on a house be separated out from the mesh so that we can control it. All right. All right, Darren, this is for you. You got it already? So I'm unneeded. Awesome. I'm joking. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just do the Boolean. Solid drill, and this, I'll just do tunnel. There we go. And now I'm going to bridge the opening. I might be able to do all three at the exact same time. Let me give it a go here. I don't want a profile on in this particular situation, so I'm just going to turn it off. I don't need 20 edge segments in there, so I'll remove it back down to 1. There we go. Starting to look like a house. Starting to look like a house. It's got a front door, or an opening for a front door, and then some really groovy windows. However, there's a couple things in here that are missing. Specifically, I need the roof, right? We've got to have a roof on this bad boy. The roof is a little bit of a challenge. Roof lines are not easy to construct. So I want to show you a couple ideas that will make your creation of your roof a little bit easier. Okay. Roofs, excuse me. Roofs present a little bit of a problem for me. And I'm going to make a new mesh item here just to ensure that I don't accidentally screw up my house. So we can see my house just chilling at the center of my scene. I've placed it in another mesh, and it's being drawn as a black wireframe at the moment. And I want to start establishing a whole series of polygons for my roof. Now, when you're defining your roof, I implore you, please, 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 keep it simple. Keep it really, really simple for your house. Don't try to make a roof that's got like 8 different compounding roof lines, okay? I know roofs are a challenge to model because of their slope, the tangency, everything's at perfect angles to one another. They can be a little bit of an issue. However, I've derived some really, really great techniques that will help you make your roofs, okay? It's a 2-part process. We're going to make the roof, and then we're going to slice our geometry in our house so that the walls of our house matches our roof line, okay? So 2-part process. Make the roof. We'll position the roof, place it on our house where we want it to go, and then we'll continue on. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use simple tools. A roof for my house is just simply going to be a cube. Okay. It's going to be a long, skinny cube like this. Let's center that polygon in our scene. Center selected across the X. Now it's perfectly centered. Rock and roll. Okay. But now I need to start establishing the pitch of the roof, the rise and the fall of the roof. Okay. And there's a couple ideas in here that we can use to quickly establish where we want our roof to go. Okay, so here's the roof. I want to move it up. And let's kind of think through this process here for a second. We can kind of see as I zoom in where the roof needs to be in relationship to the outside edge of our walls, right? So my eyeball is kind of looking right where my cursor is, right around in there. I could be precise if I wanted it to, absolutely. Actually, let's be precise. Since we're in this precision trip today, let me go to my house layer. I I'm going to select that corner vert, or any of the verts on the top of my walls here. I'm just going to copy its Y value, which is 10 feet. And I'm going to go to that new mesh item. I'll just do a little set position action. Set position to 10 feet along the Y. Boom. Now I know beyond any reasonable doubt that the bottom of my roof is precisely in the exact same location as the top of my walls. Okay? Let's get really conceptual here. Let's really push the limit of what set position can do, because this is kind of neat, actually. Okay? What if I want to have my roof be a certain dimension? What if I want to have the thickness of my roof be 5 inches? And really, roofs aren't that thick, if you really think about it. Have you guys ever crawled up in your attic space before? Don't crawl up in your attic space. It's not exactly the most entertaining place to be. It's about 150 degrees. There are spiders everywhere, and I don't like spiders, okay? And there are nails poking through the roof from where they did the shingles, right? So it's kind of like, you know, a medieval torture chamber up there. But they're not very thick. If you really kind of think about how it's constructed, there's plywood as the underlayment for your roof, and then there's usually some sort of tar paper or some sort of vapor barrier on top of the plywood to keep the water out, and then you have the actual shingles that go on top of the roof. Okay, so the roof isn't really only, you know, that thick. It's not as structural as one would believe. So maybe it's only 3 or 4 inches. I need to have the dimension of this thing be exactly 3 or 4 inches, but I don't know what it is now. Okay, and I have no idea how big this thing is. I need to move this top edge so that it's 3 inches or 4 inches away from this point over here. How am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? You can subtract the distance. You could do it mathematically in your head. I'm not very smart, though. So I can't do it in my head. I lack the ability to think at all. So I want the computer to do it for me. Okay? I know where the bottom edge of the roof is because I just copied its value. It's precisely at 10 feet. I need the top edge now to be 3 inches above 10 feet. I know what you're saying, Pat, it's really easy. It's just 10 foot 3 inches. But what if it's some really crazy value that I can't really comprehend? Or what if it's like 10.8.7 blah, blah, blah inches? You know, I know there's like 3 points in there. Just bear with me, okay? What if it's a really complex value at a complex angle? I want the computer to do the heavy lifting for me. Check this out. This is actually kind of cool. Set position is stronger than you think it is, okay? I have that edge selected. I'm going to go back into set position again. Oops, not center all, excuse me. Set position. And now, check it out. You can actually do basic math inside of this field, which is kind of cool. I'm going to go 10 feet plus 3 inches. Boom. And it will automatically figure out where that location is for me. Let me zoom out so we can see what's going on. Aha, perfect. And now, that board, or that polygon, is precisely 3 inches tall, okay? Because the computer figured out the dimensions for me just by doing that basic math operation in the set position value box, okay? FYI, and this is why Modo is so awesome. You can do this simple math in every single numerical field in the application, okay? You can do basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and I think some other things. So, and I don't have one. What if we were moving something, or we wanted to rotate something by a specific value? I can, anytime there's a number field in any of the areas inside of Modo, I can do simple math inside of these number fields. Okay. So what if I wanted to rotate something 90 degrees plus, 88.5 degrees? I don't know what that number is off the top of my head, but if I did 90 degrees plus 88.5 degrees, it's going to figure it out for me. Okay? I love that our fantastic thinking machine is finally thinking for us. I love that. It makes me very happy. Okay. Now that I've preserved precisely where I want, now that I've established precisely where my roof needs to go, I need to define a couple elements in here, okay? I need to define the pitch of the roof. I've established the outside, the location of where the roof needs to be over here. Now I need to establish the location of the center line, the ridge line of our roof. How am I going to do that? Give me some strategies on how I could do that.
Select the top polygon and align the work plane to that selection.
Over-engineering it. I like the way you're thinking, over-engineering it. Okay? Over-engineering it. Let's keep it simple. I'm all about simple, simple tools. Okay? Huh?
Are we just slicing it?
We're just slicing. We're just trying to get a center line, right? We're just trying to get a center line on the actual, on the polygon itself. So I'm just going to fire off good old slice. Shift C. And then if I hold down the control key before I click, I know that what I'm drawing here is a straight line. Okay? Now I don't care where that polygon or where that edge goes initially, because I can always move it to where I need it to go using set position. So maybe I select that edge, set position again. This time I want it to be at the center of the x-axis. So I'll place my value at 0 along the x and hit OK. Boom. Automatically moved those two vertices on the edge precisely where I need it to go. Now that I have a defined center line, I can just move it up to figure out what the pitch of my roof is going to be. So I just sliced that polygon. Let me go back in time. Shift C. In my case, it is, yeah. Mm-hmm. Then if I hold down the control key, left click and drag, I get a straight line. I select that edge. And I could even use center selected along the X if I wanted to. Since we're using the origin, or since we're putting this element at the origin of the scene, that works as well. And now I can just move that element up. Kind of like that. Okay? What are you getting?
When I do the slicing,
I have a hunch. Aha, yes. I recommend whenever you're using the slice tool to be inside of an orthographic viewport. If you're in perspective, slice gets real conceptual pretty quickly. It turns into this really weird plane, and it's very difficult for...
sorry, you walked away too quickly, please. It's not.
Oh, let's check it out.
Another step forward.
Okay, zoom in for me. What do you got selected? Now you also have your work plane aligned. Yeah. Okay, now your work plane is back to that custom location.
My stuff moved. It's not all synced. Just rolled.
Kinda. When you're hit Shift A again. There we go.
Okay.
Now it's back.
So go to root,
Cool.
and go to front. And select this front polygon.
Now, is that an extruded shape, or is it a two-dimensional polygon?
It's extruded, yes.
Deselect that then. I had a two-dimensional shape, and it was just slicing it right down the center.
So I deselected it.
Perfect. You looking at it from the front still?
Mhm.
Okay. Now go ahead and fire off the slice. Okay.
And then control.
Yep.
What's this line?
So if that's the slice, I think what's happening is it's trying to do it horizontally instead of vertically. If you were to slice like right down, there we go. Cool.
Is that the center?
That's it. Well, that's where the purple line's where the slice is going to go. Oop. What I would have done is that what I just did is I sliced it off axis, and then I selected that edge that I got after the fact, and I moved it to the center. Yeah.
So I have my footprint of my roof.
Cool.
Where was the thickness? You said the 3. What did you say it was? 3, I don't know, 3 feet.
I did 3 inches, and that's just an arbitrary number. I was just
Okay,
kind of.
So how do I go about doing that? Yeah, before I drop this tool.
Yeah.
Let me show you. This is what I have. So from the top,
Okay.
It's exactly 1 square in on everything.
All right. I love it.
So now I want to bring
I love it.
I need to actually bring it flush to the surface because it's not.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
it is. Oh, barely.
Yeah, it's close. It's close. So, and I like being, a lot of the examples that I'm showing today is how you can be, 100% accurate. But at the end of the day, it just has to look close.
So how do you do the whole process of?
So a couple differences between what I did and what you're doing. I had just a 2-dimensional cube. You have a 3-dimensional cube that's been extruded. When I was raising and lowering that 2-dimensional cube with set position, it was just kind of doing this, like that. You can do the exact same thing. You're just going to need to select something different. In order to squish it like this and to move it together as a unit, you have to select that bottom side polygon and the top side polygon. I was just doing edges.
And will I be able to bring it to a point?
Absolutely.
Rather than a peak?
Ooh, point, yeah, absolutely. If you
Because
wanted
I
to
would
do a
rather
point.
it's a square building. I would rather do it to a square
A point. I like it. Brandon has a really cool idea here, and I just want to show everyone how to get what Brandon wants. Brandon wants to have kind of like a little pyramid shape on the top of his roof. It comes to a peak instead of having a ridge like I'm making here. If you wanted to do that, which I think is a really cool idea, let me just zip out over here into perspective for a moment. So. Yeah, I'm going to extrude it here in a minute to get the full roof. So let's just pretend that that's your roof, Brandon. Okay. I would select that polygon, and actually let me get my example precisely what you have, because you have a 3-dimensional guy. Okay, so I would select both the top and the bottom polygon, and then you can go into your polygon tools. And then spiky. And spiky is going to put a vertice right in the center. Like that. And now, if I grab that middle center vertice, and I would do both of them simultaneously so the thickness is kind of consistent in the roof. Same height. We can just grab them and move them up. Yeah. So here I am. I have that top polygon selected, that bottom polygon selected, and I've gone into my polygon tools.
Okay, just the top and bottom, not the sides.
Correct.
Okay.
And the spiky tool is going to give us, is automatically going to slice up our mesh, and it's going to give us that.
And that's under deform or?
It's under polygons.
Polygon. Spiky, huh?
Spiky.
Does it matter where you put the tool? Is it always going to hit dead center?
It's always going to hit dead center. It's going to analyze the shape, and it's basically going to kind of triangulate that shape and put a vert right in the center.
And it did. So now how do I pull it up?
Now, just grab that center vert. I did both the top and the bottom at the same time, so the thickness is the same.
Okay.
Like I've done there. And then I'm just going to move it up. Like that.
Just a basic move tool, right?
Just basic move tool. Move it up. And now we kind of have that little pyramid shape. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, let me show you. I want to show you one other thing with my ridge line here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up for today. Okay, because I know you guys have a lot of work in front of you. So let me kind of scoot through this real fast. I have some editing that I need to do to my center ridge line. Clearly, this edge way out over here, all of these guys, is like in a different zip code in comparison to where my house is. Okay, so I need to move it. I need to move that edge. That edge right there. Move it so it's closer and closer and closer to the walls of my house. Okay, how am I going to do that? Drag it in. So if I just fire off the move tool, drag it in, ooh, I've changed the pitch of my roof now. If I grab actually I have both the vertices selected. If I,
you can't move, because that would be free move, and it would be hard to move it along that line.
yeah. So what can I do here to make this a little bit easier for me? Is there something inside the system that... Scale tool is going to give us kind of the same result. So if I scaled it, yeah, that's going to not give us, we need to move it, but we need to move it along a very specific path, along a very specific angle within our scene. Selection action center, absolutely, because the selection action center is going to give us the result that we need. So if I change my action center to selection, fire off the move tool, oh, it didn't give me what I needed. Because now what I want to do here is that I want to move that edge along this angle, along the slope of my roof. Let me show you something here that's amazing. Okay, this is cool because I need to change the orientation of my action handle so that one of these tool handles is perfectly matching the slope of my polygon. Okay, check it out. This is pretty neat. I'm going to select my edge, and I'm going to change my action center to element. Okay. Now it looks like nothing's happened, but element allows us to select a component. In my case, an edge. Boom. Okay. And now when I fire off the, oops, excuse me. Let me redo that. I apologize. So we select our, we'll change our action center to element. There we go. Click. Hold on a sec. Why is this not working? Fire off the move tool. Action center is set to element. And then when I click on the tool handle, it should automatically be placed along that slope. So let me go through that process again because I botched the sequence here. So we're starting over. Okay. So I'm going to select the edge that I want to move. Then I'm going to fire off the move tool. If I change my action center to element, it will allow me to click on any sort of component within the scene. I want my action center to follow that edge. So if I click on it, my tool handles are automatically going to be orientated to that edge, to that angle, and they're going to be placed in the center of that edge. Okay? And now I can just move it what looks to be along the y-axis. Check it out. The pitch of my roof isn't changing. I'm going to get it kind of somewhere right around in there. It's pretty rad. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, I'm going to lower my roof because this is just crazy. Get it to where I need to be. Somewhere right around in there. I know I screwed up the accuracy here or something, but that's okay. It's good enough for government work. And the government's closed, so I had to get that little guy in there. All right. Now I have one side of my roof that's just dialed and perfect, and the other side of my roof that's not. What can I do here? Is there a way for me to have the right side, this over here, be automatically copied and pasted to the other side of the roof? Mirror. Mirror. Okay? When we mirror geometry, it's going to flip the orientation of it. I want to get rid of the one that I don't need. Okay, I've selected that polygon. Duplicate. Mirror with an action center set to origin. And then I'll left click over here. You can see that it interactively made a copy on the opposite side of the roof. I'll drop the tool. And it looks like it didn't. Yeah, I'm bad, Pat. I should have done something before. Whenever you mirror geometry, it's important that the border verts are precisely at the center of the x-axis. So I'm going to do a little vertex set position. Here it is. And now when I mirror it, it'll be perfect. Yeah. One of the options that you have in mirror that's kind of fun is that you can have the you can automatically have the mirror tool merge any vertices that are on top of each other. So it's going to weld both the pieces together. It's going to combine and join both those polygons. So if I hit merge vertices and then do it, action center is set to origin. Boom. Now it's all one piece. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let's get this to where I want it to go. And then I'm simply going to extrude it. Shift X. I'm going to extrude it back within my scene to get the illusion that I'm after. All right. Starting to look pretty great, right? Whew. I want to save a lot of money in the summertime. excuse me, in the wintertime on heating, right? It's gonna be nice and cold in my house. I'm not gonna have to turn my air conditioner on one bit. Why? Hannah knows why. There's a giant hole in my house, right? There's a gigantic opening between the ridge of our roof and the wall. I gotta fix this. There's a hole there. How are we gonna fix it? How can we get that precisely where we need it to be?
One of the videos you showed in the homework, the guy was using constrained to background on the move tool.
We're not there yet,
Okay.
but that's a good way of working with it. With the stuff that we've learned today, what could we do? Okay, I like it. Let's see how Mika's suggestion works. She said make a loop along the top of the door. Now, because there are bad polygons, please repair your mesh by mesh cleanup. What we have here are gigantic n-gons across our mesh. Okay, this is actually bad construction geometry for most 3D applications because we did all those Booleans. Every single wall is defined by more than 4 vertices. Like this one right here is defined by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This is a 16-sided surface. Okay, this is bad geometry. So the loop slice didn't work because it doesn't understand how to slice it. So that's out.
Run cut.
Run cut. Help me out. I don't.
The cut tool.
The cut tool.
Isn't it? Or I'm sorry, the slice tool.
The slice tool. Okay. So that's a good idea. Let's go to the front view here. Select the walls of my house. I could absolutely run just our straight up slice. If I hold down the control key and draw a straight line down, I get a perfect edge. There it is. Let's take that edge and I'm just going to set position vertex, set position to a value of 0 on the x. Now they're precisely at the origin, and okay. And so this was Mika's suggestion. Just move that guy up. All right.
Nice.
All right. Pretty cool. But what about the back? We already have an edge back there.
So align that edge with the peak of the roof.
Hmm.
No, align it. We could just bring each vertex up.
Yeah. So we could do that. Okay. Absolutely right. I can even do them like this. Okay. Just bring them up. There we go. Yeah, that works. That'll do it. Let me show you another way. Okay? Another way that's just a little bit more accurate. We actually have a very, very simple floor plan for our house. Okay? If you look at the core blueprint here, it's really not that complex. It's almost a square with just kind of some chamfered corners along the back side of the home. Okay? Most floor plans aren't going to be this simple. They're going to be very, very complex in their footprint. So moving vertices up and down, there could be a lot of vertices you have to move up and down. And whenever you have to do a lot of the exact same thing over and over and over again, the chance of human error skyrockets. Okay? Let me show you an alternative that is seemingly more complex, but in the long run, on more complex shapes, it's easier. Okay? I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to go back in time a little bit here. Show you an alternative. We're going to pretty much get almost the exact same result. However, I'm going to use a Boolean this time. I'm going to use the magic of this Boolean system to automatically slice the walls of my house. Let me turn off. There we go. I'm going to grab all of these guys. And oops, excuse me, just the top polygons along our house. And I'm simply going to move them. I held down the control key and I clicked on the polygon that I didn't want. And now we have a couple options here. I think I'm going to, you can move it straight up, which is fine. And I'm going to move it up so that it's past the top of the the ridge line of my house. And it looks kind of silly, okay? But just hang out. Bear with me just for 2 seconds. It all makes sense in about 30 seconds. Because now I'm going to use the roof line. This is why I put the roof in another mesh. Initially, yeah, he's like, oh, I got it now. I see what he's doing. Initially, I said I'm going to put the roof in another mesh just to ensure that I don't screw anything up. But I thought I had a couple steps. I'm going to use the roof as a Boolean for my walls. I'm going to slice the walls. And so I'm going to get a whole bunch of edge segments that define where the roof is. And then I'm going to delete all the polygons that I don't need. So, oops, excuse me. Didn't mean to go into the Setup tab. All right. So there's my house. Geometry, Boolean, solid drill. I'm going to use the operation stencil here, or slice. Let's use slice. Hit OK. Aha! Look at that. Brilliant. Now I can go in and basically select all of these polygons and delete them. Unneeded. Don't need them.
It's like making a paper doll.
It really is. Don't need those. Bye-bye. I can turn my roof back on. And now I know precisely, beyond any reasonable doubt, that the walls are going to match the slope of my roof. And there's actually one row in there that I don't need. Because what was left here is, so this edge in here represents the bottom of my roof. This edge represents the top of my roof. Okay, I actually don't need that entire row. Because last time I checked, I'm not going to be able to see into my roof. So I don't need it. I'll delete those polygons and run our way. Pretty cool. Pretty cool, huh? I dig it. I dig it a lot. And it's very clean geometry, too. Very clean. Don't overthink some of these tools, okay? Don't overthink it. Just look for simple solutions with the tools that you have in your back pocket. Part of being a 3D modeler is looking for creative outlets on these seemingly complex tools. Okay? Questions? Welcome to the lovely world of architectural visualization. Booleans are a lot of fun, aren't they? So we're slicing our geometry with other pieces of geometry. It's pretty great. I love Booleans. I use Booleans all the time. Questions? All right, let's look at the details of your homework assignment. A couple things in here that I want to talk about before we escape for the afternoon. So let's go back to the homework tab on renderography. There are a couple elements in here that I'm going to expect you to reach. In addition to making the house, you're also going to be making the landscape for the house. Our house needs to live somewhere. It needs to be in a location. So we have to make the landscape. Okay, so you need to make some sort of yard for your house to participate within. Okay, you're also going to be making some trees and some bushes. Okay, please feel free to data mine the mesh preset library that comes with Modo. Okay, check it out. If I go back into Modo, and this is the only thing that you're allowed to copy or use inside the mesh preset library for this project. Okay, the only thing, because there are architectural elements in there that I would like you to build. Making trees and bushes is stupid, in my opinion, so I'm not going to force you guys to do it. Because it really is. It's dumb. It's very dumb. Okay, so check it out. If you go into Layout at the top of the screen, at the bottom, your interface should be divided into two separate, or a section here that includes a whole series of tabs. I'm in the Meshes tab, which is going to give us access to all of the mesh presets that come with Modo. Okay. It kind of follows the exact same navigational scheme as the material and environment presets that we're used to working with inside the shader tree. Let me zoom in. Okay, so here's how I like to navigate around my library, this little bar here. If I left click and hold on it, you can see all the folders that we can navigate within. There is, if I remember correctly, an organic folder. Okay. Plants. Aha! Lots of fun stuff. Lots of fun stuff in here. There's some plants. They even have a weed. Awesome. They used to have bushes in here. I don't know where the bushes have gone. bush no leaves, trees no leaves. I'll talk about how you guys can use those bushes next week. Okay, the geometry is really easy to include in your final piece. I think there's also one for trees. Yeah, here's trees. There's some good trees. Now I have some trees that you guys don't have, but there's some good trees in here. Okay. So there's tree 1, there's some trees with no leaves. I'll show you guys how to put leaves on all your bushes and trees next week. Actually, it's a really easy thing to apply. The system's already there. It's in place with these presets. I just got to show you one thing in the shader tree that will round it out. Applying these presets is really easy. Just double click on them. They'll automatically be generated at the origin of the scene. So you can see that mine's just chilling in the house there. Okay. Or, here, this is actually kind of really neat. If you hit undo, you can left click and drag these elements from the preset browser, and you can drop it where you want it to go in the scene, which is kind of neat. If you were to have a ground plane there, it would actually put the geometry on the ground plane. It does a really cool ray cast, and it figures out where the geometry is that you're putting the preset on, and it tries real hard to put it on that piece of geometry. Let's see if I can get my tree coming out of my roof. Oh, it's on a different mesh item. That's why it's not working. Okay. There we go. So now, yeah, tree coming out of the roof. And even match the angle of the roof too. It's kind of fun. I don't know why you do that, but you could. Oh no. Oh, I loaded one of the X-Frog trees. Damn. So right now, my scene is going to crash. Because these other trees are incredibly high resolution. Blah. Alright. So please start to populate your environment with some trees and bushes. Use the presets that come with Modo. They're pretty great. Okay. Also make a landscape, so make a small little yard for your house to live within. We're trying to make a small scene for our house to live within. So use some of the examples that I have on Renderography as kind of a guide as to where we're going and what you should be trying to create. We're not making a model with architectural visualizations like we have with other things. This is not like the medicine bottle or the cocktail glass. We're trying to make a pretty picture, and we're going to talk about some elements to make that pretty picture next week, okay? This model is just one portion of what will ultimately be a more complex render at the conclusion of this project. Okay. Now to help you out, there's a couple things that I would like you to do for your lab. Okay. Oh, let's just finish out the requirements for the homework. So trees and bushes, environment map. Okay. Use the outside, the exterior environment maps. I know it seems obvious, but some people put their houses in studios for whatever reason, okay? No, outside, use all the exterior HDR environment maps that come with Modo. There's some good ones. It'll almost instantly make your entire render feel as though it's outside, okay? 1280 by 720, it's a JPEG, and then I need a render as well. So a render of just this flat gray geometry in your scene, okay? All right.
So it'll be 2 renders then?
Say again?
By
At the end of this project, absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. This is due next week. Just the geometry is due next week.
So it's going to be similar to the fourth one?
Very similar. Geometry 1 week, textures and materials the next. For your lab assignment, this is a really, really easy lab. I want you to do some research on homes, okay? I want you to start collecting some images that will serve as a reference library for the houses that you're going to create, okay? I don't care what's in them. You just have to start using reference. You have to use reference for this project. You just can't make a house because if you just make a house from your brain, your house is going to be a cube. Guarantee it. A cube with a pitched roof that was identical to the one that I made here in class, okay? No houses look like the thing that I made here in class today, okay? They're more complex than that. I want you to start using these reference photographs as the foundation for this project going forward, okay? So spend, 20, 25 minutes. You probably can even bang it out. We got about 15 minutes left in class today, and do a small reference collection. Upload what you find, zip it up, make an archive, okay? You can, on the PC side, make a folder. If you right-click on the folder, I think it says like compress or something like that, that will generate a zipped archive, okay? Upload your zipped archive to D2L when you're done. Okay? Should be pretty quick, but I want you guys to, you have to use reference for this. Otherwise, your house is not going to look real at all. It's going to look like it came from a cartoon. Okay? I want you guys to make something a little bit more compelling and photorealistic for this assignment. Okay? You're free to make whatever house you would like to make for this assignment. I would make the suggestion that I would make a house that you see all the time. Own a house you walk by every day. You can make this building. You can make a, it doesn't even have to be a house. It can be a commercial structure as well. Just make something that you see a lot. That way, the realism that you craft inside the application will be pretty good. Okay? Questions? Everyone kind of understand the scope and the requirements for this project? Cool. All right. Let's get to work. We got about 15 minutes left. Let me stop the live stream. I'll come give you a hand, okay?